Hey, you guys. Modern policing sucks. This is Chappie from Task Force 70 Foundation. I'm here today by myself because I didn't want to pollute anyone else with my opinions. But we need to talk. We need to talk about why modern policing sucks so bad. Modern policing sucks for all parties involved. It sucks for the public in some jurisdictions. Now, obviously, as with everything I say in this video, it may not apply to your specific jurisdiction where you live or where you work. If it doesn't, that's great. But I'm talking in generalities because they exist, and they exist at this level or at a high level across the United States. Who does it suck for? It sucks for the public. Modern policing has become bureaucratically state-driven in a bunch of areas, from how the law is enforced to how you're treated by police officers, to which laws are selectively enforced or not enforced. It sucks to live in some of those communities because officers are not enforcing the law equally across the board of citizens. So it sucks for the public. It also sucks for the public, and we'll get to why here in a second, but it sucks for the public in personal interaction with the police sometimes. Vast majority of the time it doesn't, but sometimes it does. It sucks to interact with the police in some jurisdictions with some officers. It sucks for the police. They have an inconsistent set of expectations of what's expected of them, what laws are enforced today. What policies are we following? Why is our discretion being taken away in some instances, but not in others? Why is the enforcement of some laws being emphasized and the enforcement of other laws being de-emphasized? That sucks for law enforcement officers because officers want to do what's best for their community within the framework of the Constitution and your state's laws. The officers want to. They wouldn't have become a law enforcement officer unless they did. And it sucks for our culture. When we are pitted against one another, officers in the end are just citizens. They have to live in these same communities that they're policing. And the worse we make the environment for the citizens, the worse we make it for ourselves as citizens as well. So why do these problems exist? Why have we created this problem? Well, we've created it through the citizenry, through a lack of attention to constitutional principles and guidelines, intentionally, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. However, it is a fact that things have gotten worse for the citizenry in their interaction with law enforcement officers. And that kind of applies across the board, between small and rural agencies all the way to big agencies. It's the crapshoot of who you're going to interact with on both sides of this equation. This has become a problem on the citizen side because of the permissiveness based on or driven by the comfort of our modern society. People have the public in general has no expectation of their own responsibilities to maintain their lives, to maintain the safety of themselves and their property. As a citizen, you have a responsibility as the first line of defense for your life, liberty, and property. If you have been taught since you were a small child that the government will take care of you, then you will end up in a circumstance, inevitably, where a lot of people find themselves where they don't know how or they haven't taken any steps to protect themselves and their property and their families because they just assume that the government's going to do it. And the police, the law enforcement officer, is the physical manifestation of that reality. And when the officers take longer to get to the call of your burglary, or they don't take the person who assaulted you into custody, that erodes trust. That the time to build that trust was long ago when you started taking steps to protect yourself. Also, we are here as law enforcement officers, we are here as a backup to create a clean playing field for you to conduct your life as you see fit. It is not our job to maintain your lifestyle or to protect you as an individual. We are there to ensure life, liberty, and property and ensure domestic tranquility. That's what we are there for. We are there to keep the field clean so that you can operate within the Constitution and do whatever it is you want to do. In some circumstances, the citizenry expects too much, too fast of the police, and at other times they don't want to be interfered with at all. That differentiation line, in my experience, is generally when something is going bad for you because of a choice that you made, it's the police's fault for noticing and attempting to maintain a community standard to enforce the law as the Constitution envisioned. There are other times where you're doing nothing wrong and your liberty is interrupted by an interaction with the police. And that's the next piece, or the other 50% of this problem. Why modern policing sucks is because of the police. It's not the individual officer's fault. This is the outcome of 100 years of the creation of institutions that exist to support the institution of government. That is not what the Constitution calls us to do as law enforcement officers. That is not your fault as an individual officer. You only know what you were trained, and you are conditioned in school, coming K through 12. If you went to college, you are conditioned to believe these things in your subconscious, so that then when you are selected into a law enforcement agency, you go through the police academy, that conditioning is reinforced through how it is taught, or how you are taught to enforce the law. Officers are generally encouraged, taught to do what's best for the community or the government. Doing what's best for the community is good, but we have a higher level in that hierarchy than the community, and that's the individual citizen we're standing in front of. And lacking a clear understanding of what the Constitution is and what it lays out, and what your state's Constitution is and what it lays out, leads to innumerable bad outcomes that lead to modern policing sucking. If we continue to do what we think the government wants, then we are going to continue to have bad outcomes. Now, does this problem apply equally across the country? It does not. There are still constitutionally centered sheriff's offices and police departments across the country. In fact, the vast majority of them are. The challenge is the modern ability of social media communications for everybody to see everything that everyone does. And when something controversial occurs with a law enforcement officer, it's instantly on social media. That tends to encourage that behavior from other members of the citizenry. How many of you have seen videos of a traffic stop taken from the perspective of the driver when they crack the window that much and then they argue with the officer that they don't have to roll down the window? That comes from some social media content that educated the public about their rights during a traffic stop. Okay, yes, sure. But what is smart, and what will lead to the best outcome for that interaction? Neither side is absolutely right in that particular argument. Do law enforcement officers have the right to be safe on a traffic stop? Yes. Do law enforcement officers have the right to stop you in a car? Yes. Creating difficulty during a traffic stop, number one, you're not following the constitutional standard. The police are empowered in order to ensure domestic tranquility. That officer has utilized his judgment to determine that you needed to be stopped and spoken to. Police officers, as a general rule, unless it's a really unusual circumstance, we don't know who's driving. We can't see you. Despite what people say on social media about, you saw who I was, you pulled me over because I'm a man dressed as a woman, we don't see you. We see whether or not you're wearing a seatbelt, and we see your actions, the way that you're driving the vehicle. So we have the constitutional authority to pull you out of the car on every traffic stop. Arguing with us that we don't have the right to pull you out of a car is incorrect. A traffic stop is a detention based on reasonable suspicion. You're not under arrest, but you're being detained. And if you can't explain what the difference between those two are to the law enforcement officer on the side of the road, you should probably just be quiet and do what you're asked to do. It's not saying to bend over to a overarching government. That's saying this officer has a job to perform in order to maintain public safety, to protect your rights to life, liberty, and property. So we have a policy. He's been trained to do it this way. Just allow him to do it. The time to argue about this is not in front of the officer. The time to do this is to argue in front of the Article 3 power, the judge, in order to determine, to allow him to do his job. Was this traffic stop performed legally? Was the investigation conducted legally? There are well-established standards for how to do that, and the judge knows those. Every judge in the country does. Now, are there bad judges? Sure. But in the main, we need to conduct ourselves assuming that the Constitution is in effect, and this is how the Constitution works. So, on the citizen side, why does modern policing suck? Because a few people make it very difficult for the majority of officers to conduct traffic stops safely. Why is modern policing suck on the police side? What are we doing that makes policing worse? Poor training, poor selection, poor understanding on the individual officer's level of the Constitution and the laws involved with a traffic stop. And again, I'm just using traffic stops as an example, but it's a high percentage of interaction with the public that we have is through traffic stops. So that's why I'm using this as an example. If we as officers are not trained, we're not selected properly, depending on the size of the agency, generally the larger the agency, the harder it is to find the right mix of personality factors and intelligence and ethics to have a law enforcement officer. So back in the day when I first started, when there were 400 or 500 people applying for every open position, selection could be very precise. They could select the right personality type, the right level of intelligence, the right ethical character to do the job. Now, given our current challenges and demographics, it's far more difficult to find that mix of people. Part of that is demographics. Part of it is institutionalism. People who should be police officers based on those factors, on their character, on their personality, on their physical fitness, and their ability to perform a job under stress and make good decisions. Those people these days, by far, a higher percentage of those people are going and becoming linemen, or they're becoming attorneys, or they're doing other jobs that require those same traits, but they pay more. So we have that challenge. There's fewer people who exist to even apply for the jobs. Some states are intentionally misbalancing this already difficult problem through enabling law enforcement agencies to hire non-citizens to be law enforcement officers. That's another way that we as the police, as law enforcement, as a culture, are making modern policing suck. We're doing that by hiring the wrong people, kind of intentionally, in order to make a political point. That is not the purpose of the police. The purpose of the police is to ensure domestic tranquility, to create a clear playing field for everyone to exercise their rights to life, liberty, and property within the bounds of the other citizens' life, liberty, and property. One of the reasons modern policing is sucking so hard right now is that our individual officers aren't trained on that to begin with. The level of constitutional judgment training in modern law enforcement is very low, If you'd like to learn more about that, you can view the last episode, episode 12, with Dr. Regan. He does a phenomenal job, as always, of explaining where law enforcement fits into the constitutional structure. Another factor in why modern policing is sucking is that the state and local governments are interfering in how our job is viewed constitutionally. Conducting a non-formal survey of 200 officers, I asked them a very simple question. Who did you swear your oath to? Over 80% of those officers, who are good officers, I know the vast majority of these people, they responded that they made their oath to their local community. And they're not wrong, but that is not who we are swearing an oath to. We're swearing an oath that is demanded by the Constitution to the Constitution. The purpose of that oath is not to enforce federal law at the local level. That's not the point of that oath. The point of that oath is for us to recognize and stay within the bounds of the silver frame of the apple of gold. The apple of gold is the Declaration of Independence. That is what we are protecting. The Constitution is the mechanism by which we protect it. And that is why law enforcement officers at every level are constitutionally mandated to swear an oath to the U.S. Constitution. It is not to be a federalized, militarized police force. Militarization of police is a whole nother topic that I may touch on. Well, I will touch on at some point, but the militarization of police is not what you think it is. What the people on the constitutional republic side of this argument argue is that the local police are being turned into a federalized force. That ship sailed 100 years ago. And it's not that the individual officers feel a oath to the federal government. It's that their leaders have been educated for almost 5 generations now that we are a bit in the cog of the federal system. The local police are, and that is not the case. Anyhow, now we've talked about what the problem is. We've talked about why this problem exists. How can we fix it? What can we do as individuals? What's in my power to do to try to make this situation better? For me, the best way for me to attack this problem that I see as a fundamental weakness in the modern system, and if anything is going to allow our current constitutional government to fall, it's going to be this particular thing falling down, because the police are the last line of defense. As we're seeing in Portland right now, the local police department, not the individual officers, but the department has sworn its loyalty to the local government, and it is not placed in the correct position. They are responsible to the citizens of the public and the Constitution. They took the same oath that I did. So, how do we fix this on the individual level? For me, it was starting the Task Force 70 Foundation. The things that I know how to teach individual officers are the things that I'm going to work on, and our team at Task Force 70. That's why we exist, is to address this particular problem of modern policing sucking. It sucks for the citizens. They get poorer police service. They get inconsistent, non-constitutional enforcement at times. When force is necessary, it's either inartfully or incorrectly applied, or it's ineffectively applied due to a lack of training. So that's what we can fix. That's what we're going to do. What can you as a citizen do to address this problem? You can comply with lawful orders. You can encourage your local police by attempting to support them with whatever they need. If they're asking for a bake sale, help them out. If you're interacting with them at the grocery store, be polite, be thankful. that encourages the behavior that you're attempting to elicit from a law enforcement officer. On a traffic stop, the whole tone of every traffic stop ever done is driven by the person being pulled over. That's who drives the tone of that entire interaction. So if it starts up here, it's going to end higher, because we are always going to overwhelm whatever you bring us. So that's just the reality. So if it starts here, if it goes up based on the officer's actions, then we have an Article 3 counterbalance to that problem. The time to solve that is not on the street. The time to solve that is in the judicial system. Otherwise, we have anarchy, and it's impossible for the Constitution to work. The Constitution only works if we allow it to. It's only feasible for a moral people. So if you are conducting yourself correctly and a law enforcement officer does not, there is a remedy for that already baked in, right? So take it up with the judge is not just an expression, it's how the system works. If you're unhappy with how an interaction went, there are complaint processes and you have a judge. So that is the place to deal with that. The pointy end of the government's arm of force is not the place to do that, because you're going to lose that 100% of the time. And we don't like that, because you're a citizen. You're the one we're here to protect. So start it at the proper level. If you feel you were pulled over incorrectly or unethically, attempt to deal with it calmly. And if you can't, get through the interaction as best you can. There are other mechanisms to deal with that. That is, in the main, pretty unusual. So, what can the cops do to make modern policing suck less? We can take individual responsibility for our own standards. We all know in the law enforcement world that our standards have gone in the shitter. We know that we're hiring people we shouldn't hire. We all know that the training level is criminally low. That's why the foundation exists. We know that. Any one of us as an individual officer doesn't have the power, authority, or mechanisms to fix it. What can we fix? I can fix my standards. If I get out of my car and see myself in the reflection of my patrol car window and see how fat I am, what can I do to fix that? I can fix it. I can become physically fit again, because the citizenry deserves me being physically fit. If I find myself emotionally responding to an asshole and escalating a situation or not de-escalating a situation when I should, how do I fix that? If I see that I'm not good at something, if I'm not good at a skill, instead of bitching about my sergeant not sending me to training, what can I do to get myself trained? Now, a lot of internet training is nonsense, but there is some good stuff. If you go to Police One, there are some good channels on the different Facegrams or whatever social media stuff you follow. There are some good channels on education for that. You are responsible at this point for creating and maintaining your own standard. Is your marksmanship level where it should be? Is your breaching capability where it should be? I've talked to about 10 officers in the last 6 months working on the breaching portion of our Big 5 skill set for the TF70 Foundation about what breaching training they have received. And every single one of them, they were all small agency patrolmen, said none. They hadn't received any training. Well, my next question was, what training did you seek out to address that skill deficiency? Every single one of them said, well, the department hasn't sent me to anything, so I haven't gone. That is not an acceptable excuse. We still have the responsibility as individual officers to get ourselves the capabilities to build the competency that's required for us to constitutionally perform our job of protecting life, liberty, and property. Our competence is our responsibility as individuals. So figure out what your current standards are. If you don't have any current standards, you need to develop some. And it's not just in shooting, it's in everything. It's in physical fitness, defensive tactics, knowledge of law, knowledge of precedents, how your paperwork works, how to investigate a child abuse case. All of those are areas of standards that you should develop and maintain, and do it yourself. Some agencies do a great job of doing this. There are two in particular that I'm thinking of that are large agencies, so they can afford to do it. They have very high hiring standards, but that's just the beginning of the standards. Your competency is the truly important level of standard that you need to figure out if your agency doesn't provide it, and develop it yourself. That is your responsibility. What can the government do to make this problem of modern policing sucking so bad? The government can focus on what the law enforcement job is supposed to be, which is focus on ensuring domestic tranquility, ensuring that freedom enough for each individual citizen to exercise their right to life, liberty, and property within the bounds of the intersecting rights of other citizens. That's what needs to be focused on. The only way to do that is to uninstitutionalize law enforcement. There is not the word institutions in the Constitution. It does not exist. It was made up from whole cloth in the 1918 to 1935 time period. Institutions are not a thing constitutionally. Local law enforcement agencies are local for a reason. They are not part of a larger institution of law enforcement. They are responsible for protecting the rights and lives of the citizens in their community within the bounds of the oath that they swore directly to the U.S. Constitution. The government can help the most by resourcing local agencies to create and develop and maintain standards that make sense to match the needs of the local community. All of these three entities rotating around the sun of our culture are the only way, all of them turning in the same direction, is the only way to fix modern policing. If you're an individual officer who's working for an agency that's moving the opposite direction, that is lowering standards, that you know has a constitutional responsibility to, for instance, ensure domestic tranquility in front of an ICE facility that's constitutionally and legally present, and there are other law enforcement officers who respond or who report to a different government entity or hierarchical level, and they are being impeded in their job, in their constitutional duties, and you refuse to enable them to perform their constitutionally mandated duty, you should look in the mirror, and if the agency won't let you do it, you should leave. A lot of officers left during all the jab mandate nonsense, and other agencies gratefully accepted them because of their experience and their ethics of being willing to stand up to that, to not accept being mandated to put something into your body that you didn't want to do. And if you didn't do it, you got fired. Well, the vast majority of those officers have since found jobs and they're just fine. And the agencies that they went to are better for having them. So be one of those officers. If you are not willing to stand up when it's time to protect the Constitution, what good are you doing? Are you only still at that job because you don't want to lose your retirement? Is that really how you want to go out, how you want to be remembered, or not remembered at all? Anyway, only through the exercise of effort from all three of these bodies serving or circling the gravitational well of the Constitution, the citizenry, the law enforcement officers themselves, and the government, without that, all of this will collapse and nothing we do will win or will be fruitful. So In order to do your part, whether you're a citizen watching this or a law enforcement officer watching this, focus on what you can do. What are your standards now? What do they need to be? Where are you lacking? It's not your department's job. Well, it is, but if your department's not doing its job by training you properly, educating you properly, and having selected your teammates properly, you got to do what you know is right to get to where you need to be with your standards and then work on it. Being a law enforcement officer is not a cush job. This is a trade. It takes a long time to get the reps in to be able to execute your job flawlessly. And your job is to be able to, right now, I suspect for the vast majority of officers watching this, your job is to either develop and maintain a higher standard for what you're doing, or if you're already doing that, bring up others behind you and help them do the same thing. Guys, we really appreciate your attention. We look forward to talking to you again. You want to support the foundation and our 3 mission pillars, our campus training, our mobile training teams, and our Patrol Institute project, please visit us at tf70.org/donate. All we're asking for is $20 a month. In exchange for that, you get some unintrusive emails. We only send 1 or 2 a month, I promise. They're usually worth reading to keep you updated on what you're donating to. We try to communicate, we try to over communicate with you because we appreciate your donation so much. And every month we give away stuff that the firearms and police equipment industry has donated to us to give to you as a thank you for your donation to service of our mission. Guys, we hope to see you soon, and we'll be back again next week. And until then, please help us out with by visiting tf70.org/donate. And until the next time, I'm Chappie. We'll see you soon.